It's no doubt that the newest Kakarot DLC is a bit controversial, leaving some fans feeling underwhelmed with the plot, while others praise the expansion for its innovation and thrilling final battle. But why exactly is it so controversial? As we all know, Kakarot is the newest Dragon Ball RPG on the market, and as of recent, it has gone beyond the confines of the played out Raditz through Kid Buu storyline and allowed us to experience other areas in the Dragon Ball universe that we don't typically get to see. And in DLC 6, otherwise known as Goku's Next Journey, we get perhaps the best rendition of the end of Z arc to this date. Now trust me, I'm not going to overly praise this DLC or anything, because there's a lot I didn't like about it. And to be honest, prior to the release, I was feeling a bit underwhelmed myself. I mean, for months, all we knew about this DLC was oob. Now, that being said, I have nothing against this little guy, but I couldn't help but wonder how the hell they would justify an entire DLC around just one fight. And the answer we got genuinely shocked me. Starting off with the positives, there are a handful of surprises packed within this expansion's short runtime. And to start, I knew we would have some sort of flashback to Goku's Spirit Bomb, but what I didn't expect is the game starting directly at the battle with Kid Buu himself. Now typically I would say it's a bit off-putting for them to reuse content in this manner, but in this situation, I found it to be quite fitting, in part due to the fact that I haven't played the main game in a while, and this served as the perfect warm-up. But also the aesthetic of the battlefield is grayed out, giving you the feeling that we're watching a memory of the fight. And also, I couldn't think of a better place to begin this little story. In addition to this initial fight, you'll also come across a handful of throwback battles, some optional, like Nappa for instance, and others are mandatory for story progression, like Frieza, Cell, and Buu again. But in general, although some can argue this is lazy, it was pretty fun to relive these battles and fight a more difficult version of these enemies, especially if you haven't played the main campaign in a while, like myself. The story itself, though, is a bit of a mixed bag. Firstly, to give credit where credit is due, it does a decent job at expanding upon the End of Z saga, transforming the pre-Oob preamble into a mini training arc. Doing this gave them the opportunity to further develop some of these characters in the cutscenes, allowing us to experience what Goku's been up to after all this time. Look at the size of his house. My guy has a mailbox now. And I don't know if others have mentioned this, but where the hell does that tail go? Yikes. There's also some good battles here, including not only sparring against a teenage Goten, someone whom fans have wanted to see for many years, but also the ability to play as a 4-year-old Pan for, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time ever? Similar to how Tien was utilized in the previous DLC, her playtime is very limited, and the initial battle against her is playing as Goku's granddaughter, and by proxy, getting the chance to use her cool, albeit goofy super attacks was still a welcome surprise. During this period of time, Goku is also stuck in base form with a strict set of moves for these main missions, which controversially, I kind of enjoyed. Goku is very powerful at this point in the story, and you're fighting your teenage son, granddaughter, and a 10-year-old, so it feels pretty appropriate that he would tone it down at least a bit. The World Tournament, aka the advertised portion, is short. I mean, the whole thing is short, but yeah, really freaking short. It's just 2 fights. Okay, and this fine Vegeta mission, which took me way longer than I'm comfortable admitting. Like, there's no way bro was right there the entire time. We do, however, get a full-on boss-style battle of Pan fighting the notorious Wild Tiger, which is cool and a good way to showcase her character. The fight with Oob itself is fine. Goku calls his mom fat and insults his family multiple times, which is kind of funny. He then gets a bit of a power boost and pulls off some new moves. Nice. And you might actually have to be on guard a bit more. But this is still Kakarot we're talking about, so you're probably not in any serious danger. Anyway, after that, that is it for the main campaign. A fitting way to end the saga, but also very short. The second time was an hour flat, and the original was about an hour and 45 minutes. With cutscenes. Speaking of cutscenes, they are absolutely gorgeous and the real point of purchase here. Full of vibrant colors, bringing to life each of the characters magnificently, and truly showing us what a modern interpretation of these moments would actually look like. Especially since the anime itself is a bit dated. But seriously, I cannot overstate how incredible this looks animated. So much so that I felt invested in watching something that I've seen 100 freaking times. Okay, I haven't seen the end of Z arc that much, but at least several times. And regardless of how you feel about the DLC overall, when else can we see the end of Z arc done to this magnitude? Gameplay and cutscene wise. So honestly, I'm not mad about it, but I could see how others could be. The other oddity though is that the story doesn't seem to connect or try to associate itself in any way with DragonBallSuper, which of course can be off-putting considering this takes place after the events of DragonBallSuper itself. Instances of this include several snippets of dialogue, like a subquest in which a Frieza soldier is seemingly completely unaware that, well, Frieza's still alive. And there's also no mention or even subtle nod that there's any events taking place between the Buu and end of Z arc. Most notably though is the fact that Goku and seemingly Vegeta are unable to transform into their god forms, which is, I guess, officially confirmed in the real final act, the post-game saga of Two Saiyans. Let me be 1000% clear, I love everything about this. From Goku reminiscing with Pan, doing mental image training with the big three, and even the symbol representing the missions looks so cool. Kinda reminds me of Sonic and Shadow a little bit. Of course, the main fight here is the rematch between Goku and Vegeta. Here we see a Super Saiyan 3 Goku fight against a full-powered Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta.
That's what I like to see.
Interestingly enough, unlike how the Super Saiyan 3 transformation typically dries your ki at a rapid rate, here you have no decrease in ki whatsoever, almost like a mastered version of Super Saiyan 3, which is a plausible feat for Goku at this time in the story. And you'll need every bit of that Super Saiyan power to take down Vegeta. Everything about this is peak. From the fight being broken up into 3 sections, the quick time events which are so freaking cool looking, and the fact the devs went all out for the cutscenes here. This is undoubtedly the best looking and the best fight gameplay wise in all of Kakarot. I'll just say it now. And the beam clash at the end is absolutely insane. Vegeta switching up from Gallic Gun to Final Flash mid-struggle, dude, it's like one of the coolest things I've ever seen in Dragon Ball. What really makes this fight and the DLC so great though is the dialogue, especially the post-fight explanation of why Goku, still after all these years, strives to be stronger. It really felt like I was watching a new episode of Dragon Ball Z, post-Oob fight. And honestly, if this is how Z ended, I wouldn't really be mad about it. While playing up through this point would probably take you about 2 hours, if we're generous. The post-game, aka extra mode, packs on a lot of extra content. We get 10 subquests, which typically I'm not a huge fan of, but I think they're a tiny bit better this time around, including meeting a Demon King Piccolo enthusiast who's definitely on something, and activating memorial spots. These memorial spots are new additions to the game, explaining what happened in the Z story, coordinating with that specific location you're at, some of which will thrust you into battle, like a rematch with our favorite bald Saiyan, Nappa. Aside from this, you can also, of course, continue your training to unlock the same freaking supers as the main game. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this. You have to upgrade and in most cases, unlock these same exact attacks and know-hows all over again, which is very silly and clearly just there to pad out the post-game. To be fair though, they do include a couple new moves, like Dragon Flare, which teleports you behind an enemy instantaneously, allowing for some seriously badass looking combos. In terms of gameplay, I actually think I enjoyed this a bit more than the previous DLC, as certain missions you're stuck using the newly introduced ground combat, and others you can fly, which provides a solid amount of variety in my opinion. The same rules from DLC 5 apply to the tournament grounds here as well, allowing you to get up before the count of 10 or ring out an opponent. The ring out feature is still pretty iffy though. Tough training also makes a return, allowing you to fight strong versions of the previous matchups, and is, I guess, the most grindy part of the post game. With all this in mind, the game really does pack quite a bit of content. I mean, I'm nearly 4.5 hours in, and I still have a long way to go before I can call it a wrap. But before we call it a wrap here, let's briefly discuss our thoughts on the DLC and if it's worth the purchase. Overall, despite some of the hate, I had a really good time playing this DLC. The meat of the content is short-lived, yes, but the cutscenes are beautiful, the action is pretty damn solid, and the Goku vs Vegeta fight is, in my opinion, worth the purchase of the DLC on its own. And if we're to take that as canonical, that literally changes the entire ending of Z, even just a tiny bit. To be honest, I could confidently recommend this DLC to any major DBZ fan just based on that fight and the dialogue alone. All in all though, I do appreciate how they stayed faithful to the end of Z by not incorporating Super, but at the same time, I do wish we would have seen more connections to Dragon Ball Super, because it would have been nice to see Goku take Oob to Beerus's planet for training. But in the end, it seems like they did everything in their power to disconnect the ending of Z to the Super continuity. And the whole retconning of the end of Z arc, I mean, up till like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, that was so damn avoidable. What the hell are y'all doing? This is all we've known for like 30 freaking years. But anyway, that's it for today. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a like. Comment below on what you guys thought of the DLC. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What side are you on? And we're trying so hard to hit 1,000 subs by May. If you guys could drop a sub, we're so close. I'd really appreciate that. And yeah, see you guys again really soon. Peace.
Hold on. You're leaving us?
Later.